your Alexa-powered smart speaker and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
All right, Dan, are you going to make the announcement or am I?
You sound more excited about it, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, our next big AM 560 event is coming up on Tuesday, April 25th, and this one you will want to attend. We're calling it Beyond the Talking Points, presented by Fox Valley Coins, and it'll feature Dan Proft sitting down one-on-one with Juan Williams from Fox News for a moderated conversation about all of the big issues of the day, the 2024 election, the economy, the war in Ukraine, immigration, and much more. Many of you joined them when they did this event in 2018 with Donna Brazil, which was a lot of fun. I remember that. If you missed that, you'll want to make sure you join us on April 25th at the Meridian Banquet and Conference Center in Rolling Meadows. Tickets are on sale now, right now at 560theanswer.com/beyond. There's a VIP reception with Dan and Juan, but those tickets are selling quickly, so make sure you get your tickets at 560theanswer.com/beyond. And thanks to our sponsors, Joe Cotton Ford in Carroll Stream, Woodland Windows and Doors, Blue Star Security, and the Blue Label Cigar Lounge in Lockport. And we will see you Tuesday, April 25th.
Well, that should be fun. It should be a spirited conversation with our friend Juan Williams. So, yeah, we've got into it before on this program.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's bring. Now you get to do it face to face. Two enter the cage, one leaves.
I like one fine, but it'll be spirited. Not like spirited, like Stanford law student spirited. It'll be spirited, like substantively.
I've decided I'm going to be the die director of the event. So any questions or concerns, come see me.
There you go. Now on matters legal, we talked earlier in the program about the Trump post over the weekend that he expects to be arrested tomorrow, courtesy of the Manhattan DA on, he didn't get into this, but essentially it's a case predicated on a violation of state law with respect to business records that he is trying to upcharge to a felony because Bragg, the Manhattan DA, is essentially arguing that the violation of the business records law was in furtherance of violating campaign finance laws, federal crime, campaign finance laws at the federal level because he wanted to hide this hush payment he allegedly made to Stormy Daniels. So the interesting thing is Trump getting ahead of his legal team, which would not be surprising, but his lead defense attorney is saying that they have not had contact with the DA. And she says, we're all reading tea leaves because they refuse, meaning the DA's office, to communicate. It's been over a week. I haven't got any information from them, which is not normal. In normal run-of-the-mill cases, they'll be talking to us about what date they expect to turn in an indictment. They'll be saying, well, we'll let you know. That's the normal conversation you have with prosecutors, but that's not a conversation she, representing Trump, is having with Manhattan DA Bragg's office. So
what does that all mean?
What does it mean is, I don't know. I mean, there was some suggestion that the Manhattan DA's office was communicating with law enforcement to make arrangements for Trump to surrender, possibly talking to Secret Service per those arrangements. But again, his lead defense attorney is saying, we actually don't know and I haven't heard anything. For more on this matter, particularly the legal matter, pleased to be joined by William Jacobson, who's a clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, also the founder of legalinsurrection.com and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation. Insurrection, that's a loaded term these days. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
So the case against Trump, whether or not an arrest happens tomorrow, the idea that the DA is going to move forward with charging in this case, a case that the feds chose not to pursue half a dozen years ago. What's your perspective?
Well, the first thing is we don't really know what's going to happen, and I think everybody's speculating based on leaks to the New York Times, leaks to Fox News, Donald Trump putting something on Truth Social about being arrested tomorrow, which they've now walked back. So we don't know. But from what has been revealed so far, it appears that the DA in Manhattan is doing a real legal stretch to try to come up with some theory that would elevate what Trump allegedly did to a felony and would also perhaps salvage a statute of limitations problem, because the basic crime we think he's being accused of is falsifying business records, which is a misdemeanor in New York, unless you can prove that it was done with intent to violate some other law. So apparently the theory, we don't know, is that Trump was trying to violate campaign finance and other federal laws by doctoring the books in New York State, so that would elevate it to a felony. That was not pursued by the feds. That's been pretty soundly rejected and criticized by both left and right-wing commenters, so legal commenters. Even the New York Times, when they reported on that and said, this is highly unusual, this is novel, this is not the way it's normally done. So if what we think is going to happens, this certainly would have the appearance of being a politically motivated prosecution, doing something for Donald Trump that they never would do for any other defendant.
And how would the arrest play out? I mean, would he turn himself in? Would they go get him at Mar-a-Lago? Would it be handcuffs, a perp walk? I mean, how does it go down?
Well, in a rational world, they would allow him to surrender himself out of view of the cameras, someplace, maybe at the DA's office or some precinct someplace, but that's an irrational world. We know when it comes to Donald Trump, prosecutors are often not rational. So, when it comes to Roger Stone, CNN was tipped off in advance and was there for the raid. So I think that there is a significant possibility that even if the DA's office wants to play, rational actor here, that somebody in the office will tip off the press and that it will be a complete circus when he arrives. But I doubt, I'd be shocked if Donald Trump makes them go and extradite him from Florida.
Well, that would be fun, and it's been weeks since we had a good raid too. So
that's right.
Yeah,
we're due.
We'll see. I wanted to get your perspective on the other side too. The talk about impeaching Joe Biden is starting to get ratcheted up among some conservatives, including Joel Pollack, Harvard Law grad, writing about it at Breitbart. Now that Hunter Biden has confirmed what we already knew to be true, but confirmed in the wake of this reporting on a $3 million wire from a Chinese communist interest that was split among Hunter, Joe's brother Jim, and Hunter's girlfriend / brother's widow Haley. The argument is that this potentially constitutes a bribery, and that this is potentially an impeachable offense. Now, Pollack in his op-ed is getting ahead of where the House Oversight Committee is, but with the acknowledgement of these foreign business dealings and the distribution of money to the family, if you can make the connect to the quote-unquote big guy as getting a piece of this action, do you think this is colorable under the standards for impeachment?
Well, we have to understand impeachment is essentially a political act. It's not a legal act. There's not going to be a judge who rules on it, whether it's a high crime or misdemeanor. And certainly the two impeachments of Donald Trump were purely political acts. There certainly is a lot of smoke there with Joe Biden. By all appearances, he sold his influence as vice president and post-vice president and likely candidate to foreign governments through having his family paid off. That's pretty bad. I think that would constitute certainly grounds for impeachment. But the question is, do the Republicans want to go there? Are they willing to go there? And I think that these latest revelations about other family members getting payment, I mean, what else was the money for other than to influence Joe Biden? So Joe Biden sold his office. He lied about it on the campaign trail. He's been lying about it ever since. And the question is whether Republicans politically think that's the way they want to go, or do they think that will actually play into the hands of Joe Biden? And they're never going to get a conviction in the Senate, so he's not going to be removed from office. Right. So it's really a political decision. There's certainly enough there to indicate that Joe Biden, if not committed outright crimes, certainly violated his oath and loyalty to the United States.
Well, the other thing that happened over the weekend, I mean, it was so curious that the family can't even keep its story straight. Hunter Biden concedes the point that this wire occurred, that there was this business interest with a Chinese energy concern, and says, but this is just the normal course of business, and it's not a big deal. This is just me doing business, and it's completely legitimate and above board. Joe Biden is asked about it by the press corps about this wire, and he says it didn't happen. So Hunter says it did, and it's not a big deal. Joe says it didn't happen at all.
Right. I mean, Joe Biden has been lying about this since it first was revealed during the 2020 campaign. He said he had no knowledge of what his son was doing. That's provably false. He said he had no involvement. We know, at least based on what's been revealed from the laptop, that appears to be false. He denies everything, but that's Joe Biden. Joe Biden, his entire career, has lied about everything. He lied about his education. He lied about his class standing. He still lies about everything. And so the fact that he's now denying what is provably true about the wire, I mean, there's actually evidence of it, and he is just denying it, is Joe Biden. I mean, somehow Joe Biden, who was the joke of the Senate for his whole career, he was the punchline to every joke about Washington, got repackaged as grandfatherly, kind Uncle Joe, and that was one of the biggest media coups in the history of U.S. politics.
Yeah, and he campaigned from his couch so people couldn't see what was really going on. So, Mr. Jacobson, what work did they do in China that would elicit a $3 million payment?
There's nothing. There's nothing they did.
Okay.
Just like there's nothing that he did in Ukraine. There's nothing that he did in Ukraine that would justify the payments to Hunter Biden. So this was all influence peddling. It's Biden family influence peddling. We tend to focus on Hunter Biden. We tend to focus on the laptop. But this is the Biden family cashing in on Joe Biden's office as vice president and his likely campaign for president.
And we've seen this influence peddling operation before. Maybe it was a little bit more sophisticated when the Clintons did it through their foundation. But the argument was always, that this is perfectly legal. And I understand the distinction you're making. Impeachment is a political process, not a legal one. But what about legal peril here for one or more of the Bidens under actual federal laws like Foreign Agent Registration Act and other laws that relate to foreign business dealings?
Yeah, well, I'd like to know whether they've been interviewed by the FBI, whether they've given statements to the FBI, because people go to jail when they've committed no crime for lying to the FBI. And I'd like to know if Joe Biden was interviewed by the FBI, because if he lied to them about, as we know, he's lying about the payments and the family influence peddling, then that's a crime. So I think the process crimes we're not seeing weaponized so far, at least not publicly, by the feds against the Biden family. But of course, we don't know who they've interviewed, who they've taken statements from. You would think in a normal world they would have interviewed Hunter Biden and they would have interviewed other people, but we don't know if that took place. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, whether there's some other crime here, I think is to be determined. I think we need to know more about what happened, but the media, which dug really deep on Donald Trump and in many ways made stuff up, seems very incurious about the Biden family peddling influence.
You're a professor at Cornell Law School, again, one of the putative top law schools in the country, like Stanford. I mentioned Stanford in passing previously. Certainly, you've seen the treatment that a Fifth Circuit Court appellate judge got at Stanford the other week. And I wonder if you were surprised by what happened to Judge Duncan at Stanford.
I was, because he's a federal appeals court judge. And the sort of shout downs that you see on campuses normally don't happen at law schools. They did happen at Yale Law School. So there are exceptions to that. But normally you don't see the complete craziness and malign protests that you see on undergraduate campuses. So that's issue number one. So that's surprising. Two, I think that Stanford, one of the top three law schools in every ranking since I went to law school in the early 80s, has always been at the top. So you don't expect it there. But it was particularly vicious. I think it's a reflection of the politics. It's a reflection of frustration by progressive students who have been brought up in a culture that teaches them that people who disagree with them are not just people who disagree with them, they're actually evil people. And that there can be no two sides to almost every issue, and that their side is the only issue. So it reflects an intolerance which is increasing. I can't imagine that would happen at Cornell Law School. I can't imagine what happened to Judge Duncan would happen at most law schools, but it is very curious to me that Yale and Stanford, two of the three top-ranked schools, have had these incidents. I think there's something about the elite environment, the super elite environment, which is becoming increasingly intolerant and increasingly, vicious towards people who disagree. And so I think that's a warning sign, because let's face it, a lot of these Stanford law students shouting horrible things at Judge Duncan are going to be in prosecutors' offices. They're going to be at U.S. federal agencies. They're going to be political candidates. And so this is really scary. These are the sort of people who are going to abuse the legal system for political ends. And I think that's the biggest takeaway here, not that Judge Duncan was insulted.
He is Professor William Jacobson, clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law, founder of LegalInsurrection.com and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation. Professor Jacobson, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, Barry Sterner, founder of Townstone Financial. Are high interest rates scaring you off from purchasing a home? There aren't a lot of houses for sale, so don't look for the housing market to crash, which means please don't put your home buying dreams on hold, waiting for lower interest rates, which may never come. You only live once. Remember, none of Townstone's home mortgages have a prepayment penalty, so if interest rates decrease, you can refinance with a low closing cost refinance at any time. If you're starting a new home purchase, Townstone is the only place to contact, because we not only help borrowers with great credit and a large down payment to streamline their home purchases and quickly close, but we're also experts in helping borrowers with the so-called difficult loans. First-time home buyer or self-employed, we have a special program for you too. Need cash but don't want to lose your 3% low interest rate? We can do a cash-out home equity line to pay off your high-interest credit card bills while keeping your low first mortgage rate. So call 312-896-2110 or go to townstone.com. That's TOWNSTONE.com.
Townstone Financial is licensed in Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, NMLS 136639, www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org, Equal Housing Lender.
There are more than 40 million people enslaved in the world today, and that number grows every day. Most of them are